Well, hello and welcome. As I was saying to Bob outside before, the good news is we are all singing from the same song sheet. The bad news is there's not a lot of new news in my introduction of the next session. The High Value Nutrition Challenge is unique amongst the science challenges, and that the outcomes will largely be measured in economic terms and measurable in specific outcomes such as sales, revenue, products in development and commercialised, and ultimately consumers around the world, but particularly focused in Asia and China, consuming high-value nutrition food products from New Zealand. And that gives us a focus not just on good science, although good science is fundamental to the success of the challenge, but importantly, how that science is translated into the commercial opportunities and outcomes. And careful translation is needed. Given the team we have in the room today and your broad experience, you all have sat in sessions with scientists and non-scientists where it seems that they're speaking different languages. And a really big part of what will set the science challenge up for success is enabling the translations from those two parts of this important network to come together and speak one language and develop products that meet the needs of consumers and the wants, because food is still about taste. So we really need to make sure in the discussion today that we form a common understanding of where we are now and where we want to be. And this next session starts that two-way conversation that Craig has said that we need. So what we're going to do this morning is focus on growing an understanding from a commercial perspective of what have been some of the opportunities, but also the roadblocks in commercialising high-value nutrition products. The panel are here to share their views and their experience, and to talk also about opportunities and barriers to making high-value nutrition food products. So the format that we're going to follow is shortly going to invite the panellists up to the stage. We'll do a short introduction, and then each panellist is going to spend 5 minutes answering those key questions around commercialising high-value nutrition products and some of the barriers and roadblocks. Then we're going to have a session in working in tables, and for some of the small tables, they might like to combine with those next to them, to really reflect on what you've heard and your own experiences and come up with 3 key points. Then we're going to summarise and report those back. Now, there's not enough time for every table to report back their 3 points, so what we're going to do is really ask for the tables who've got a strong point of view that they'd like to share, so about 5 tables to share their top 3 points, and then gather any additional new points from the rest of the room. And then at the close of the session, I ask you to leave those points clearly on some post-its on your table, because we'll collect all those up, and then those post-it notes plus that feedback will be used to inform the session, the workshop session that Craig will lead this afternoon. So this is a really important part of the day where we move from us up on the stage talking to the room to making sure that the room is talking as well, both amongst yourselves and summarising those views. So what I'd like to do now is to invite each of the panellists to come up to the stage and join us for an opportunity to share their views. So we have Stephen Smith, who's the CEO of One Above. One Above is a beverage product that is definitely marketed on its functional benefits, and Stephen's going to be sharing his thoughts with us. Sam Bridgewater from the PureFood company. Sam's business is based on his own personal experience being turned into a commercial opportunity, and he'll have some very specific insights to share with us. Angus Brown, who I know is here, there he is. Angus is the Business Development Manager at the Food Bowl, which is part of the New Zealand Food Innovation Network, and in that role has had the opportunity to see a broad number of businesses experiencing that early commercialisation and production phase, and we'll have some really interesting insights to share with us. Scottie Chapman, entrepreneur and now CEO and director of Spring Sheep Milk Company, who brings that experience not just of functional products but also particularly selling into Asia. And Dr. Peter Brown, who here he is, who is Innovation and Research Manager at one of New Zealand's largest food businesses, Goodman, and we're looking forward to his contribution too. So In the interest of fairness, we're going to go in the order in which the speakers are printed on the agenda. So, Stephen, I'd like to invite you up and to share your insights with us first.
Hi everybody. My name is Stephen Smith, I'm CEO of One Above. Quite simply, our product helps people recover from the effects of flying. So we have a natural bark extract that we source that has been sort of clinically proven to help reduce the length and severity of jet lag. It helps boost your immune system, and it also helps with hydration when you're at altitude. So we currently ship to about 25 countries around the world at this stage. We are effectively building big businesses up in North America, a real focus on Western Europe, Asia, and also now the UK as of last week. So the business is rapidly growing, but not without its challenges and also the opportunities in front of us. So I'll try to share a few of those today. But I think the first thing I'd like to do is to offer everyone in the room free product. So next time you fly, just get in touch with me, and I'm happy to shout you the first one. And from there, if it works for you, which I'm sure it will, happy for you to continue to buy it. My email address is stephen.smith@flyoneabove.com. Please get in touch. So I'm going to talk quite practically about some of the roadblocks that we've faced when we're trying to build our proposition in multiple markets with multiple customers across the world. The first one really is for us about just building awareness and credibility with our customers and also our consumers. So one thing that once you start getting a little bit of success out there, one thing I can guarantee you is that every media company, every advertising agency, every digital company in the world is going to be chasing you down, thinking you've got bucket loads of money and wanting to help you spend it. The one thing that we, to be honest, made some challenging errors with is that we got a little bit caught up in our own BS, I guess, as I say in America, about how big and how quickly we're going to grow our business. We spent too much money ahead of the revenue curves, and particularly in North America. And I was just talking to York from Manuki, another fantastic product that everyone should start consuming. But one of the real challenges is that a lot of these customers take much longer to come on stream than you ever think they will. So in your forecasting models, you're looking at this beautiful P&L and giving yourself a big pat on the back, saying, right, revenue is going to start coming on board. Therefore, I'll start investing in the brand or investing with a customer at this point. I can almost guarantee you that you'll get it wrong. And the margins of error when you're starting are quite extreme. So if you're running a really tight cash flow business, which is what we do, the risk of that is that not only do you find yourself in a situation where you need more capital, and you're not achieving your revenue, which is a pretty embarrassing thing to have to go back to your shareholders or anyone that you're trying to raise capital from, but you're actually facing a situation where potentially the revenue is coming, but you've already spent all your money. And that in itself is quite a challenging balance to get right. So that's one of the first things that we faced, particularly in North America. I'd strongly recommend get a really strong base of distribution, fight the urge to spend money, and then start investing to drive rate of sale once that's in place. That'll be sort of the first piece of our experiences in North America anyway. It sort of leads to the next situation around forecasting. So we've got a new supply chain director, Regan, he's been terrific. So I brought Regan in. I spent sort of 18 years working at Lion, so I brought Regan in because I knew that he had the expertise in forecasting. And it's quite a challenging process, and it's quite confronting, but it's such a really critical component of your business model. What we ended up doing was breaking down every single distribution point that we service into whether it's an A, B or C location. So an A location is one of our biggest stores. So if you go out at Auckland Airport, the Relay store at Auckland Airport, and we've got 20% market share of those coolers out there, that's an A store for us. An A store operates very, very differently to what a C store is. In a C store, you're probably talking about, I'd say, 20 or 30 times the difference in revenue from an A store to a C store. Now, when you're sitting back there again looking at your beautiful P&L and your forecast and your revenues, if you're not being that specific, what you could end up doing is assuming everything's an A store, and you're finding that your revenues are looking beautiful. You start bringing on these customers, and because you haven't taken the time to truly understand your customers and truly understand their store configurations, their footprints, do they have 2 coolers, 1 cooler, how many square foot do they have, what the airport for us, is it a big airport, a small airport, and looking at all of those factors, you can completely go crazy in terms of what that forecast actually tells you, and I can almost guarantee you again it'll be wrong. What that means is what's happened to us in some cases is that if you've got a short shelf life, or let's say it's 12 months, by the time you make it, you put it on a boat, you get it to the customer puts it in their warehouse, then distributes. That shelf life could have gone from 12 to 8 months very, very quickly. If you then have sent too much stock up there, or to wherever you're sending stock to, you're going to find that either it reaches its best before while it's in the store, or it's reaching its best before within the warehouse system and logistics network that you've set up somewhere around the world. And again, that's a very expensive and frustrating process for not only ourselves but also for the customer. The other piece is around pricing, and I think one of the things that we've been working out, we've just made a decision, because we're a unique product, quite often, again, coming from the beer world, you say, right, Stella Artois will be 120% index to Heineken, starting at Classic will go straight on at Heineken pricing, Corona will be 110% of Heineken pricing, etc., etc. Because these established brands, established categories, it's quite easy for you to sort of segment the market from a pricing point of view. Imagine for a lot of the people in this room, if you're trying to create something quite unique and special, looking at pricing is actually quite hard. Who do you benchmark off? For us, we've just made a decision that premium water, and the brand is Evian, because they're everywhere, and the most expensive thing apart from us and the cooler, that for us ends up being the most natural place for index our pricing off. If you don't have other products, within your category, then it's quite difficult, and it's quite an important thing to get right, because you absolutely can claim some level of premium for being a high-value nutrition product. It's what is that premium, who do you index off, and how does that work when you're working across multiple markets? So getting into so that was some of the barriers or some of the things to think through. Some of the key factors is around making sure that you choose your channels carefully. So for us, we look at what we call travel essentials locations, which is a relay store. Now we've just done a global deal with Lagardère. They're a French company, owns all of those relay stores. They've got about 4,500 locations around the world. They've got about 1,200 relays, so that's a pretty good start for us. We'll focus on partnering Lagardère. That's an important channel for us to build our credibility of our product within. The other one we've chosen is what we call drug or pharmacy, because we know that through our shopper journeys and other things, we know that people go to the pharmacy or go to a drugstore before they go and take a flight. So they are 2 key channels for us to build credibility. Now, what you're probably better off trying to do is not, if somebody else comes and talks to you, that it's not really in your channel strategy, you need to think quite hard about, do I really want this revenue? Because what that revenue can do, if it's not the right customer or the right channel, you could end up with all those sort of things I spoke about. The product doesn't sell, the staff don't believe in it, it's a tough sell, and you find out you're winding yourself back out again. So that's the other thing. And the last thing really is, I know this seems to be it's a lot about China, but it's actually quite pertinent. I think for us, we have to pick the big markets. Being a small, lean team, we are sort of finding ourselves a little bit fragmented, but we can achieve 90% of the world's biggest travel markets with 2 customers, WH Smith and Lagardère. So we have 2 customer contacts that can take us in almost every single travel hub. The only ones we can't get into is Dubai, which we're talking to. Very simple discussions, very simple model. They open up each market for us as we go. That's great for us with small, lean teams. If you spread yourself too thin, you're never going to do anything properly, and you just got to focus on the markets that matter for you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sam Bridgewater and I'm a director of the PureFood Co. Just a quick little bit about our company. We started around 3 years ago following a personal experience whereby a family member struggled with conventional food, and we decided to look into it and understand whether there were options available, what we could do around trying to give people back that opportunity of being able to consume real food. And from that we started making what's clinically termed texture modified food. To paint your picture a little bit easier, pureed food is one of our lines of product, but really we wanted to create food that was delicious, that people really wanted to eat, that was nutritious and of the right texture, because a lot of our customers are in the healthcare, aged care industries, and it's highly important that they are able to receive the right texture for us to be able to deliver that nutrition to them. Foods are nutritionally fortified, and finally we needed to make the system incredibly easy for people to use, whether they're in their own home, whether they're in a public hospital, or whether they're in an aged care kitchen. So that was that's in a little bit of a nutshell what we do. We spent 18 months developing the product, and then the last 18 months marketing the product, and we're not yet exporting, just focused in New Zealand at this stage. Firstly, just wanted to talk a little bit about what I think has contributed to our initial or early stage success. It also ties into being a roadblock for us. We very early on identified the need to have a real industry collaboration. We had a very clear picture as to who we wanted to supply our foods to, and how we were going to get there was right from day one. We were very strategic about that. So we wanted to get into the hospitals and get into the aged care industry, which can be very hard to get in, and create a short feedback loop, which I'll come back to. We really wanted to get in there to ensure that we could create a vested interest in the product with the dietitians, the surgeons, the doctors and the like, because we really wanted to create a model that is based on the pharmaceutical model, where we had people out there recommending the product. And that is, we spent a lot of work doing that, and it turned out to be reasonably successful, in that now we have a mini sales force out there. When people come out of hospital, or they call the Cancer Society or Alzheimer's, they get told about our product, which is fantastic. And it also led to us winning contracts to supply around half of the country's public hospitals with our specialist foods. So that throughout that process, and it was all about creating relationships that helped us really bring that feedback loop, shorten that feedback loop, because in working with the healthcare and aged care industries, we really needed to be able to continually enhance the product, but being able to do so very quickly, to continue to evolve, innovate and enhance the product. And in saying that, it was a roadblock as well, balancing industry stakeholders, balancing, you going in there and talking to kitchens, how they currently prepare the food, and to bean counters at your MetLife Cares or whoever, really trying to balance all these different stakeholders, as well as our in-house food scientists and chefs as well, to make sure that we could get something where the industry is valuing it in a world where historically food costs and food budgets have been very closely managed in aged and healthcare. We're trying to show people the value that they can get out of it. Another point as well, in terms of the key factors of success that Vicky touched on earlier, was that we're very aware that the science, and for us particularly the texture, is incredibly important. If we have thin liquids coming out of our foods that can be aspirated into the lungs, and we've got someone who is looking at pneumonia or hospitalisation, so getting that texture right is incredibly important. But in the end, it rests on consumer acceptance. So making sure, and the example that comes to mind for me is we provide a lot of foods to people with dementia, and if they don't like the taste of a food, if it's not a food that really they can really enjoy from a sensory experience, they will spit it out. And so we haven't been able to deliver nutrition to them, which is the key aim of our product and what we are now validating. So it's absolutely imperative that the taste and the textures and mouthfeels come in there. And so we've, throughout the process, put a real focus on those areas, with the science coming in behind. Anyway, those are the key factors and roadblocks for me. I see my time's run out, but thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
Hi guys, so my name is Angus Brown, and as Vicky said, I'm the Business Development Manager at the Food Bowl. For those of you that don't know, which I'm sure most of you do already, the Food Bowl was part of New Zealand Food Innovation Network. We're a government-funded agency designed to help facilitate the development of new high-value food and beverage projects. We're primarily funded through Callaghan and then also through EDAs such as ATEED and CDC. So there are a number of staff here from the network and the other hubs alongside the Food Bowl, such as Food Waikato and the Food Pilot. So if any of you are looking to prototype your new ideas and help scale them up, that's where we come in. So we were asked two questions for this panel today around and the first one is more around what the roadblocks are stopping businesses from landing successful food health claims. So it depends on what kind of business you are. If you're a big company, I don't really think there are many roadblocks. The only one that I could really think of, because you've got budget, you've got connections, you've got distribution, you've got everyone, The only one that I can think of is actually creating a product that resonates with the consumer and being innovative beyond what your current portfolio is. And that is often quite hard. And what we're seeing in the global market is that the large guys are actually acquiring small startups who are innovative and are outsourcing their innovation to them. Whereas for small companies, there are heaps of roadblocks. You're very limited with capital. You have to convince your idea to capability providers such as researchers, investors, marketing people, and other capability providers that can help you along your journey. And so my advice to you lot would be just to be persistent and charming. And as long as you have a smile on your face and you show up the next day and yes sir, no sir, you will eventually get there. In terms of the key factors in successful product development, so I've got two hats. The main hat that I wear is BDM at the Food Bowl. So I've been there for 4 years, where we've helped companies, including Sam, grow from a startup through to quite an established SME, and then we've also helped larger companies develop new products outside of their existing portfolio. But also, I also myself am a startup, so I can definitely empathise with the likes of Sam and the rest of you around how tough it is to develop a product. And so my one's around a health drink that targets brain function. It's taken almost 4 years to be ready to actually launch it onto the market. So from those two hats, I've kind of drawn about 6 or so key factors that I believe are really important to developing a successful product with the food health relationship, but actually being also successful in the market. So in no particular order, the first one that I believe is, and it's funny coming to a science conference, but brand. So you need to have a really, really good brand. And what I mean by that, the name needs to ring true to the product. It needs to be unique. But it also needs to look good, and your packaging needs to look good. I've heard Peter Cullinane from Lewis Road Creamery talk a number of times, and he believes, and as I do, is that your packaging is half the battle. So please employ really good designers to work with you on your brand and your packaging. It is incredibly important. The next one is effect. So it's all very good showing a food for health relationship in the lab, but if consumers can't really feel it, or if you can't find a way to actually show consumers that they can feel it, then you're not going to have a good time getting that product into market, especially if it's new with a new function that they're not really aware of. If they can feel it, then you're really winning. The next stage is also influencers. So it's for bigger guys, it's easier to distribute out, and if it's already kind of a product that people are well aware of, it's quite easy. But for new products and new brands trying to assert themselves, you need to start at the top of the pyramid. So what I mean by that is you need to be selling in retail outlets that are aligned with your brand, and restaurants or supermarkets that are really at that higher end. And it's much easier to start there and move down than go from the bottom up. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go 30 seconds over. Sorry, Vicky. The next one is PR, and PR helps educate your story. So who here has heard of Impossible Foods? Show of hands. Who's actually bought an Impossible Food burger from a store? No one. So this is a Silicon Valley food tech startup that's been going for about 5 years now. If you're in the food world, you've heard of them. They're a company that makes a beef burger made entirely from plants. And they've done a really great job at creating some hype and a lot of interest around their product, and they're leaking it from the best restaurants in the States down. And they've created such good hype that a lot of people are of a lot of interest to this product. You do need to differentiate yourself, and you need to have a clear benefit. So it's all very good saying that this dairy product helps with bones, calcium, protein, but if you don't have a single clear-minded benefit, then that's going to confuse the consumer. And that is it. Thanks very much.
Morning everybody, I'm Scottie from Spring Cheek Milk Company. We're creating a nutrition business around what sheep milk can do better than cow and goat. So to give a little bit of background, Spring Sheep Milk Co is a 50-50 JV between Landcorp, which is government's SOE for farming, and my company, which is a private equity and a boutique Asian sales and marketing company. When we set this up about 18 months ago, we only had 3 things that we said we wouldn't do. 1, we won't sell to China. 2, we won't do infant formula, and 3, we won't do cheese. Briefly on that, no China because I don't like uncontrollable risk. No infant formula because anything that's peaking now won't be peaking in 10 years, and that's the sort of start of this business. And no cheese because I won't be a Me Too product. You can't get high value if you copy, and if you've tasted the European sheep cheeses, Manchego, Pecorino, Roquefort, they're fantastic at it, we won't be a Me Too. So that only left us about 205 countries and about 20,000 different products to choose from when we decided what we were going to do. So we're not too concerned about that. Just listening through, when I said create nutrition business around what sheep milk can do better than cow and goat, it's not what we think can be done from a science basis, it's what consumers will value that can be done. So just listening earlier on today, I think about attributes versus benefits. We have all these amazing attributes with sheep milk, 60% more protein, 58% more calcium, very, very easy to digest because of the medium chain triglycerides. As far as a consumer is concerned, that's all worthless because nothing's in that for them. They don't care. A consumer wants to know, when I have this product, it solves a problem. Easier digestibility or whatever else it happens to be. So we can't get hung up on the whole, it can do this, because we have to understand the difference between an attribute and a benefit really, really clearly. Consumers only buy benefits. They won't even care that it's sheep milk. They'll care what it does for them. So when we work through what we can do and how science helps us, and science can help us, we have to understand that you have to know what your consumers want before you go ahead and solve their problem. And I've done quite a few businesses. When you start up, one of the things you always think about is this an opportunity or is it a black hole? because there's gaps everywhere. And half the gaps exist because no one's thought of it or technology hasn't got there to fix it yet. And the other half exist because they're a black hole, and even though you may have the science or the ability to do it, a consumer's not going to pay for it. So don't go there. So if you haven't got your lead from your consumer, don't start. It's too hard for my world. The only other, just to answer the two questions specifically, the main roadblock stopping businesses landing a successful food for health product, in my world, that's looking for perfection and overanalyzing. So we've only been around about 18 months ago. We said, let's do this. We've got one product commercialised in Taiwan, another one that goes on the shelf next week, another product which is a sheep milk gelato starting in New Worlds and Farrows at the end of this week. And we prototype really fast and really rough and go, that doesn't look too bad. Then we do something called an MVP, and that's a minimum viable product. Get it on the shelf. And then we work from there. So for example, what's just arrived in Taiwan now is our probiotic powder, which is 80% sheep milk with prebiotic, probiotic, and a few other sprinkles on top. It's not perfect, it's not right. We took what's in the market now, where do we think we can put in, and we got it on the shelf and got it up there. Now we follow up with our researchers first week of December, and we go, we know probiotics good as a group, but do we have the right amount? How does it work? Are we right? How do we tweak this to make sure it keeps working, or we get out and put the next product in? And just big company versus small company. Big companies have distribution advantages, but I'm really pleased I'm not in one anymore because they don't have the flexibility that we have. When we want to do something, we just do it. And if it fails, and we carry on. But we don't have a cash cow of existing products turning over that pay the bills. And not having that safety net means your urgency and your ability to deliver. We can't fail. We don't have the ability to do that. So we have these drivers that are much, much better, and that's why the playing field is leveled out so much more. The big companies don't have the advantage they used to because the power of distribution, while it's amazing, won't give you these new products that will drive forward and create value. So I'm very happy in the startup space. Last question, key factors for success is, as I've actually mentioned, be consumer-facing, not science-led. So we talk about backfilling with science. If we don't get a product up and working in a minimum viable product range, we don't have the cash flow to do anything. We can't do clinicals until we have some cash flow going through. So find out what your consumer wants, use your insights, give them benefits, not attributes, and then backfill with science. You need that science, but it's chicken and egg on how you do it. That's it from me. Thank you.
Hi, Peter Brown from Goodman Fielder as the new Innovation and Research Manager. So it seems to be a bit of a trend today. I've only been there for a month. So I'm actually going to talk to you more about my previous experience in the intellectual property game and how that kind of ties into high-value nutrition and how we can kind of leverage that angle. So I guess just looking at the two main questions that I was asked, so just to go back to what I was doing before, I was at an intellectual property firm, and I was the head of the food and beverage innovation team, where we were looking at this type of thing, but for not only large companies, but medium, small size enterprises as well. So got a bit of insight from the different companies and even individual entrepreneurs looking at this space as well. So what are the main roadblocks that we can see? I think one of the biggest things, and I think we're starting to do it better and better, is around the collaboration angle. I think we've seen some really awesome examples of the science challenge where we've actually got big institutes working together to achieve a common goal. I think that's really good, but I think we can build on that more. So we hopefully starting to see more of the big companies working with small companies or even individuals that have some great ideas or concepts or some initial proof of concept, and I'd like to see more of that in the future. Another main thing as well, looking at it from the marketing angle in terms of collaboration. So something I actually came across the other day, I don't know if you guys have heard of Pass the Idea. Really, really cool idea where you kind of pitch your concept or something and you get a lot of feedback and help you redefine what you're actually trying to do from a marketing angle as well. And even possibly even just getting together informally with different corporates that aren't competing necessarily but are looking at it from the marketing angle and help you redefine how you're pitching it to consumers and your target audience and so forth. And something that Scottie was mentioning around prototyping, I think there's some huge value there in terms of getting some original market feedback, and just not actually having your product ready to launch. It's you kind of faking it until you make it. Having a product where you can actually get consumer feedback and then deciding which of the projects you're potentially on the table you're going to go forward with. So I think there's some real opportunity there. The second thing in terms of roadblocks from an IP angle is not giving away your IP, and that kind of mentality in New Zealand that something's not clever or she'll be all right type attitude. I think there's huge opportunity there to better protect the intellectual property that we've got coming out of these projects and leveraging that till the cows come home. Something you mentioned, Angus, about Impossible Burger. So we were at the event the other day, and they mentioned that they actually have something like 89 patents or something like that around the concept. So I think New Zealand lags a bit behind in terms of identifying the clever stuff and making sure that's well protected. There's I can't quite remember which country it is in Europe, but a similar population size to New Zealand. And back in my previous role, I was looking at the amount of, so their export market was a very small percentage of it was food orientated, but they had way more patents than New Zealand in comparison, and that was a really good indicator in terms of the innovation that was coming out of that country and how much they valued the intellectual property. So I think we should look more about that around that angle as well. And I guess the third thing around potential roadblocks is the cost involved with self-substantiation around health claims in New Zealand. I think it'd be really nice to have more tools in place to make that more accessible, not only to big corporates, but small companies that are looking at this space as well. New Zealand's only the first step. If most of New Zealand companies are looking at the export market, and if you think New Zealand's hard, wait until you try and get a similar type of claim in China. So I think that we've got a huge, important challenge there in terms of making it more accessible in terms of how we can enter those other markets, and we need to be thinking about that right from the start. Key factors in a successful product, again from the intellectual property angle, making sure you're timing your intellectual property piece with when you're likely to be launching, because nobody wants to be, filing all these patents like Impossible Burger and then having huge costs right up front before you've actually launched your product. So there's a real strategy involved in making sure that you've got it all lined perfectly and you're not disclosing anything too soon through your patent publication, and various other things you need to think about on that angle. Something just building on what Angus was saying before about how brand is so important. I think the health claim regulations and the self-substantiation is a great platform to link the science to the brand, and making sure that the brand that you've got really brings in the science into the messaging that you're trying to say. So it's not just about having something that looks really good and resonates with your customers, but making sure you're actually bringing in the science into that message as well. And finally, I don't know, I kind of lost track of time, but I guess the one big thing as well is once you've done all this huge amounts of R&D that's led you to potentially be making these amazing high-value nutritional claims and so forth, but how are you going to leverage that in your strategy? So it's about knowing what your intellectual property is, and that might be the scientists behind it. So you really want to leverage that in the story and the message that's coming through from a New Zealand perspective as well. There's some really interesting opportunities potentially for licensing intellectual property. So if you think of self-substantiated claims as an intellectual property asset, you could potentially license that, and you potentially make passive income through that stream, kind of similar to I know A2 didn't do this, but they have their main model is licensing their intellectual property overseas. And I guess kind of what we're doing today is talking about problems that we've encountered. So another big aspect of this, you're going through a huge R&D program. Sometimes you're going to have a lot of experience or negative know-how, and I think there's a huge amount of opportunity in New Zealand to share that insight into experiments or problems that you've encountered, and potentially you can even make money out of it as well, because negative know-how is hugely valuable. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, thank you to all the panellists. I think for me personally, one of the things I really enjoy, even after 20 years in the food and beverage industry, is the exciting stories of new ideas, new thinking that are challenging our established norms, but drawing very appropriately on the experiences and creating those norms, but challenging them and thinking differently. So really enjoyed hearing some of the stories, and I'm definitely going to hope to catch a couple of the panellists over lunch to hear more about their experiences and their businesses. I thought I'd just briefly touch on my experience because a couple of things really resonated. The first one is that innovation is really hard. The statistics around the number of innovative products that are still on the shelf, that are still being purchased and consumed 24 months after launch, this is a really tough bet to make for a big business or a small business. Whether they've been through the rigours of a highly defined process or they have taken that one crazy idea that a couple of people thought of over a beer and decided to turn it into a business, the odds are not too dissimilar out of those two processes, because it takes a whole lot of persistence on keeping on getting out of bed and trying again when people say you can't, but also a whole lot of reality and experience to bring innovation to fruition. And so innovation is really hard. It gets a lot easier if you bet the farm, because then you've got a burning platform and then you're committed. And I see Scottie nodding because he and my husband and I have followed a similar business model there. Bet the farm and then you're going to be successful because it's your only choice. But the other insight I think that is really important, and speaking from an industry perspective, is that you have to have a business. Innovation is not an idea. Innovation is an idea that gets commercialised and made into something that someone who earns maybe $25 an hour walks through a store or gets online and spends a high proportion of that per hourly income on buying and has a good experience and goes back and buys it again. And so to make that work, you do have to have a business plan, a business model, a supply chain, a brand, a way of ensuring that you meet quality requirements. And I think one of the things that's really important when we're looking at high value validated health claims is ensuring that they are then connected with business models that will actually deliver economic outcomes, because that's at the core of how we will measure the success of the challenge.